Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. I'm Dave Plummer, a retired operating systems engineer from Microsoft going back to the MS-DOS and Windows 95 days. And while I didn't know it when I was working on those products, I have autism. I don't usually bring it up on my channel because it's not usually relevant to the content at hand, but it is today as we undertake to look at a host of fictional characters such as Sheldon Cooper, Mr. Spock, Hermione Granger, and even Wednesday Addams. We'll start our tour with Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. While Sheldon is never explicitly diagnosed with ASD within the show, many fans and viewers have speculated, or simply assumed, that his character exhibits traits that may be associated with autism. It's important to remember that these connections are speculative and are not explicitly confirmed by the show's creators. Some of Sheldon's characteristics that could be interpreted as potential indicators of ASD include social awkwardness. Sheldon often struggles with understanding social cues, norms, and etiquette. He has difficulty recognizing sarcasm and may take things literally. This lack of social awareness is a common challenge faced by individuals with ASD. Rigidity and routines. Sheldon is known for his strict adherence to routines and schedules, such as his designated seat on the couch, his weekly meal plans, his laundry night, his bathroom schedule. Many individuals with autism also rely on routines and may have difficulty coping with changes to their established patterns, obsessions, and special interests. Sheldon has intense interest in specific topics like comic books, video games, and physics. He can become completely absorbed in these subjects and often struggles to understand why others might not share his enthusiasm. This focus on specific interests is reminiscent of the narrow, intense interests often seen in individuals with ASD. Difficulty with empathy. Sheldon has a hard time understanding and relating to the emotions of others. While he is highly intelligent, he often struggles to connect with people on an emotional level. This difficulty with empathy is another common trait among individuals with autism. Repetitive behaviors. Sheldon exhibits repetitive behaviors and rituals, such as knocking on a door 3 times and saying the person's name in between each knock.
Penny. Penny. Penny.
Repetitive behaviors are a common ASC. Sensitivity to sensory stimuli. Sheldon is sensitive to certain sensory stimuli, such as loud noises or specific fabrics. For example, not unlike myself, he is very particular about the type of fabric to use for his clothing and bed sheets. Sensory sensitivities are also commonly experienced by individuals with ASD. Literal thinking. Sheldon often takes things very literally and has difficulty understanding figurative language or humor. This kind of literal thinking is common among individuals with autism who might have trouble grasping abstract concepts such as sarcasm. And now it's time to explore a character who's not only fictional but also alien, Mr. Spock. As a kid, I eagerly anticipated the Saturday morning reruns of the classic TV series, Star Trek. While Captain Kirk was the ostensible hero of the show, for many fans such as myself, and I suspect for many fans of my channel, it is the character of Spock who resonates the most strongly and for whom they feel the most kinship. I was as eager as everyone else for Kirk to save the day just as soon as Mr. Spock figured out how they were going to do it. I've long wondered if the fictional Vulcans of Star Trek were perhaps inspired by somebody that the author, Gene Roddenberry, may have known and that this person may have had ASD. The parallels, though never explicitly called out, are many. Spock's appeal lies not in the fact that he's a paragon of virtue or because he is devoid of emotion, but because he has learned to master and control his emotions. Vulcans are said to have historically been plagued by a lack of emotional control, and so today they have pledged to suppress and control their emotions lest they erupt negatively.
But the healthy release of emotion is frequently very unhealthy for those closest to you.
This focus on logic and reason can be linked to the emotional regulation challenges faced by some individuals with ASD who may struggle to understand or to express their emotions in a neurotypical manner. Vulcans often struggle with social interaction. Vulcans are depicted as having difficulty navigating social situations with species that are more emotionally expressive, like humans. This can be compared to the social interaction challenges faced by individuals with autism who may have difficulty reading social cues or understanding others' emotions. Vulcans are known for their straightforward and direct communication style, which can come across as blunt or insensitive to other species. Similarly, individuals with ASD might struggle with understanding the subtleties in communication, such as sarcasm, and can be perceived as being blunt or overly literal. Numerous episodes contain vignettes wherein Spock is confused by a figure of speech because he has taken it literally rather than as a figure of speech.
Are you all right?
Yes, I believe no permanent damage was done.
What happened? The occipital area of my head seems to have impacted with the arm of the chair.
Vulcans adhere to strict codes of conduct and principles which can lead to inflexibility in their thinking and actions. This rigidity is similar to the preference for routines and resistance to change often observed in individuals with ASD.
Now you listen to me, you pointed-eared Vulcan. I don't like that. I don't think I ever did, and now I'm sure. What's happening to you, Spock? Nothing that shouldn't have happened long ago.
Vulcans, especially Spock, are sometimes depicted as avoiding or minimizing eye contact when interacting with others. This is a common trait in individuals with ASD who may find direct eye contact uncomfortable, overwhelming, or simply unnecessary. While Vulcans do experience emotions, they are trained to suppress them and to maintain a stoic demeanor.
I must master it. I must control.
This lack of emotional expression can resemble the muted or atypical emotional responses sometimes exhibited by individuals with ASD who may have difficulty understanding or expressing their emotions in conventional ways. Vulcans also have special interests. They are portrayed as having deep, focused interests in specific areas of knowledge such as science or philosophy. This could be likened to the intense, narrow interests often seen in individuals with autism. While Vulcans may be perceived as lacking empathy due to their suppression of emotions, they are in fact capable of deep empathy, as evidenced by their telepathic abilities such as the mind meld. This can be likened to the misconception that individuals with ASD lack empathy when, in reality, they may simply experience empathy differently or struggle to express it in typical ways. Spock still experiences emotions and empathy, but often the context has to be explained to him before he does. When Bones is reported to have a terminal illness, for example, it becomes a touching scene where Spock impassively places a hand on his shoulder for comfort and looks intently at him, making it clear that Spock is deeply moved by the news. And although not a prominent feature of Vulcan characters, their heightened senses, such as their ability to hear higher frequencies, could potentially be compared to the sensory sensitivities experienced by some individuals with ASD. And moving from aliens to magic, it's time to look at the character of Hermione Granger. Hermione is one of the most beloved and iconic characters in modern literature, and for good reason. As a member of the Golden Trio in the Harry Potter series, she is known for her quick wit, her sharp intelligence, and her fierce loyalty to her friends. However, some fans and scholars have suggested that there may be more to Hermione's character than meets the eye, and that she may exhibit traits that suggest she is on the autism spectrum and experiences ASCs. There are several traits that Hermione exhibits that may be indicative of autism spectrum disorder. First and foremost, she is incredibly intelligent and analytical with a remarkable ability to retain and recall information. She's also very detail-oriented, often noticing small details that others might overlook. For example, in the first book in the series, she is the first to realize that the devil's snare they are trapped in can be defeated by sunlight. In addition to her intelligence and attention to detail, Hermione can also be quite socially awkward at times. She often struggles to understand social cues and norms and can come across as blunt or insensitive. For example, in the second book, she tells Harry and Ron that they have the emotional range of a teaspoon when they don't understand her concern about a dangerous diary. Hermione's love of routine and structure is another trait that may suggest she is on the autism spectrum. She's a stickler for rules and order and can become anxious or upset when things don't go according to plan. For example, in the third book, she becomes extremely distressed when Harry and Ron don't take her time turner plan seriously. Finally, Hermione's intense focus and interest in her studies is another trait that may suggest she has ASD. She's passionate about learning and mastering new skills, often spending long hours in the library alone researching and studying. This single-minded focus on her interests is a hallmark of many people on the autism spectrum. It's worth noting that J.K. Rowling has never explicitly stated that Hermione is on the autism spectrum, and it's possible that these traits are simply part of her character rather than an intentional portrayal of ASD. However, given the similarities between Hermione's character and the characteristics of ASD, it's hard not to see why some fans and scholars have made this connection. From her intelligence and attention to detail to her social awkwardness and love of routine, Hermione's character displays many of the classic ASCs. Wednesday Addams is a fictional character from The Addams Family, a popular American sitcom that has been adapted into numerous TV series, movies, and other forms of media. She's known for her morbid and macabre sense of humor, for her love of all things dark and spooky, and for her deadpan delivery. Some fans and scholars have suggested that Wednesday's behavior and personality may be indicative of autism spectrum disorder. I will explore some of the traits exhibited by Wednesday that may support this hypothesis. First and foremost, Wednesday's highly independent and self-sufficient. She's often shown pursuing her own interests and hobbies, such as practicing archery or playing with her pet spiders, without seeking validation or approval from others. This intense focus and independence is a hallmark of many people on the autism spectrum who may struggle with social interaction but excel in solitary pursuits. Another trait that may suggest that Wednesday's on the autism spectrum is her bluntness and lack of filter. She often speaks her mind and doesn't hold back, even if her opinions are controversial or unconventional. This lack of social awareness and inability to read social cues is common among people that experience ASCs and who may struggle to understand the unwritten rules of social interaction. In addition to her bluntness, Wednesday can also be very literal in her speech and interpretation of language. For example, in the movie Addams Family Values, she asks her camp counselor if they have harmony between people and nature, taking the question at face value rather than understanding it as a rhetorical device. This literal interpretation of language is another trait that is often seen in people with ASD. Wednesday's intense focus and dedication to her interests is another trait that may suggest she's on the autism spectrum. She's often shown pursuing her hobbies and interests with single-minded determination, often to the exclusion of other activities or relationships. This level of focus and intensity is a common ASC. Finally, Wednesday's lack of interest in social norms and conventions is another trait that may suggest she has ASD. She often wears black clothing and makeup, even to formal events, and is uninterested in conforming to traditional gender roles or expectations. This disregard for societal expectations and norms is often seen in people with ASD who may struggle to understand or care about social conventions. From her independence and lack of filter to her literal interpretation of language and her intense focus on her interests, Wednesday's character displays many of the common ASCs. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that I know that there's an appetite for this kind of content. And please do check out the free sample of my autism book on Amazon, Secrets of the Autistic Millionaire. It's got nothing to do with money and everything to do with living a successful life on the spectrum. It's everything I know now that I wish I'd known back then. In the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage.